me say that, so right after I graduated from college, I had an opportunity to visit the Washington metropolitan region, and I came to Montgomery County for a quick visit. As a matter of fact, I just by accident happened to participate in a fundraiser for then Ana Sol Gutierrez was running for the first time for the Board of Education. And I remember being so struck because I was living in Columbia, Missouri, and I was so struck by the extraordinary diversity in this region, and specifically in Montgomery County. And I remember thinking to myself, if I were to consider raising a family in the United States, which I wasn't planning on doing because I was on my way back to Venezuela at that time, this would be the place where I would do it. This would be the only place that I would consider. And I would always tell people that this region, and Montgomery County in particular, was just such a vibrant and such an inclusive and welcoming place that this is where I would want to raise my children. But destiny is really interesting because this is where I raised my amazing Afro-Latina young women daughters. And I'm so fortunate, and I feel so blessed to have had that opportunity. But that's what really then led me to start looking closely at many of the issues of quality of life in the county, specifically in education. Very soon I discovered that in this amazing place, there were some things that we needed to work on. There were disparities that also existed here in this place that I considered to be a model. And very soon I realized that there's more than meets the eye. And so that really led me to all my advocacy work, my service on the Board of Education, and now on the County Council. And we have all worked so hard to address these issues on so many different levels. Every person that is here, every person that is there, I think has all tried to work towards this issue. But I am convinced that unless we have a framework and unless we have legislation that mandates us to look at the data carefully and really truly consider and have deliberations that look at whether our decisions are going to exacerbate or whether they are going to close these disparities, we will be here 30 years from now really having the same conversation. So that's why for me this is really truly the beginning for us to then work very deliberatively and very intentional, looking at data and really holding ourselves accountable, all of us, to make sure that everything we do is through this lens. Because the bottom line is that when all of our residents have access to opportunities, then everybody benefits here in Montgomery County. So this is just the kickoff of the amazing work that we will all do. This evening we will have a forum, and I invite every one of you to be here at 7:30 p.m. will be the kickoff of that community forum. I welcome you to take a look also at the toolkit that has been developed in collaboration with the council and MCPS. And you can take this toolkit and you can have a conversation in your living room, in your synagogue, your church or mosque, in your neighborhood, et cetera, and then give us the feedback. So tonight is not the only opportunity for you to give us feedback. I also want to acknowledge our student member of the board, Anaya, because she is dedicating a youth forum just on this issue to gather the feedback, and that'll be April 8th. And you will see also that there are boards with the timeline. So please spread the word. Please stay involved and participate in this amazing work. And with that, I want to now turn it over to County Executive Marc Elrich, again, who has been a champion and has worked hand in hand with me and my colleagues to get us here.
Thank you. This is a really special day. This is my 100th day, and and I want to say that when I was campaigning, I didn't promise a lot of stuff because I knew there wasn't a lot of money. But not everything you need to do takes a lot of money. Some things just doing the right thing. And I had set out early childhood and racial equity lenses as two of the most important things I wanted to do. And I appreciated working with Nancy last spring in getting a bill through the council that would then obligate the next council and the next executive to do this. And I would say we knew exactly what we were doing. And I'm happy to be obligated. It is an honor to be obligated to try to fix something. So I'm really, really happy with what's happened and how this is going forward. My office will create an office dedicated to this issue. We are going to make sure that our departments all have people who focus on this issue and who have accountability measures, and that they're not self-evaluative, but they're evaluated independently, because I think it's really important that people have confidence that there's been an independent view on our progress. So I don't want to be in a situation where we just have happy stories to tell. I want to make sure we tell the right story and talk about where we are in all of this. This is going to be an interesting round of change, I think. I've talked a lot about racial equity lenses out there, and I will say I feel a special obligation to the African American community, because when you talk with Gare and you work with the people doing this work, the thing they kind of highlight is the fact that the African American community who came here unwillingly 400 years ago, I think it's the end of 410th, no, it's 402nd anniversary, 400th even. So that's a long time ago. And those disparities that started with slavery have persisted throughout the 400 years in America. And that if you were now to, and we all went through the training, if you were to adjust for where you were born, the city, the economic status, whether you had one parent or two parent, whether your parents were college educated or not college educated, whether you lived on the right side of the tracks or the wrong side of the tracks, you adjust for all that, and African American social indicators are below everybody else's social indicators. And this is after 400 years. And I'm haunted. I saw a movie last year. It's the James Baldwin movie, I'm Not Your Negro. And I am haunted by a couple of things in the movie. One is the part where they interviewed Dr. King. It's footage from 1965, I think. And King is being pressed on the resistance to the civil rights changes. And King says, they think we're going too fast. They want us to wait another 40 years. And I'm sitting in the movie theater. I had 40 to 1965, and I say, oh, King was so wrong, because we're beyond 50, and we're not where we need to be. And at the end of the movie, there's an interview with Baldwin, and Baldwin talks about, I forget whether you use the word the Negro problem, the black problem, the African American problem, but he talks about it as the problem, as it's usually stated, and he said, this is not their problem, this is a problem of white America. Because the people who don't accept the African American community professionally, intellectually, or in any way, is us. We're the barriers. There's nothing they can, African Americans can go to school, get educated, rise through their professions, and it doesn't change their perceptions. And I remind people that, that made me think about how, as a white person, no matter where I go, I never had to think about being white. I never worried about an interview and said, well, what will they think of this white guy? I never walked into a store and said, all eyes are on the white guys, right? I mean, and I thought about what it'd be like to have to deal with that every day. And I never had to deal with it a single day. And for people to go through their entire lives having to think about how people think about them is a burden. And so there's equity work, and we're going to do social justice. And somebody asked me the other day, we're going to look at gender, and we are for sure going to look at gender, because nobody can be excluded from doing the right thing in social justice. But we have a special, I think, mission, and that's we need to tackle what has happened to African Americans and what we can actually do in the county to reverse this legacy that kind of still haunts this country. And I feel, deeply committed to that. This is, the kind of social justice work I've done through most of my life. And so to me, this is just a culmination and an opportunity to try to take this down the road a bit further than we've ever been able to go. So I'm really happy that we've decided to engage in this work, and that in general, pretty much every leader in the county understands the importance of doing this work, and to be in a place in America, and you think about what's going on in other places in America, where everybody is on the same page and has a commitment to trying to get this right. This is a special place. Montgomery County, special in a lot of ways. This is one way that I really appreciate. We can do the right thing here, and we can do that in the community that generally accepts it. So I'm looking forward to this. We're going to put the pieces in place. I know you all are going to legislate, and we're going to implement. And I'm really happy that it's going to be a partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so now I will, I'm going to have my colleagues introduce themselves, because they are here and they want to make sure that everybody knows that they stand ready to support this. And I say just introduce yourselves because, of course, we want to hear from the rest of the speakers who represent the community. So we'll start with Council Vice President Katz.
And I'm Sidney Katz. I'm the 3rd District Montgomery County Council representative. I congratulate everyone doing this. I certainly congratulate the county executive and the county president. Thank you all for being here.
Buenos días, damas y caballeros. I'm Gabe Albornoz, County Council Member at Large. This feels historic, this feels right, and this feels long overdue. And I want to acknowledge the leadership of our Council President, Nancy Navarro, who's been a friend and mentor for a number of years. We are ready to roll up our sleeves, we are ready to right injustices, and we are ready to ensure that future generations don't have to go through the same struggles of past generations. This is both a moral and economic imperative, and Montgomery County must lead, as it has in the past, to be a beacon for our entire country. So thank you all for coming today, and I look forward to participating in this most important effort. Gracias.
Good morning. I'm Andrew Friedson, District 1 Council Member. It's an honor to be here. Racial inequality is a stain, and like any stain on our community and on lots of communities, if you don't acknowledge it, if you don't address it, it sets to the point where you get comfortable with it. You might even accept it. And I think today is an acknowledgement that that stain is not okay and that we have to put all of our efforts to bear, community efforts and county government efforts. And I want to acknowledge and appreciate the Council President for her leadership on this issue, for the County Executive's leadership on this issue in finding an institutional solution to an institutional problem of institutional racism. And so I am honored to be part of this critical effort that's long overdue and look forward to working with everybody, not just behind me here, but in front of me and beyond these walls. Thank you.
Good morning. Tom Hucker, District 5. Thank you so much, Nancy and Mark. I've been working this inequity vineyard for many years, and I've never seen such a great commitment from the top level of county government. I'm proud to represent one of the most diverse communities in the nation, and this approach is really going to help us serve all the residents of my community in particular. We have 3 times the unemployment of the rest of the county. We have schools like Eastern Middle School that have been left behind and not renovated since the 70s. We need a hard look at our policies and action, meaning new policies and new funding. The county has committed for a long time to more transit, more housing, and a cleaner environment. This approach means building the first BRT system in East County, making sure rental housing is safe for everyone, and that residents are trained for the green jobs of the future. Personally, I'm very committed to tackle inequality this year and long beyond. That's why I testified with Marc for the Just Cause Eviction Bill in Annapolis yesterday. That's why I'll introduce a bill to refinance student loans soon, and that's why I've already introduced legislation to get the lead out of our drinking water, get the mold and vermin out of our housing, and get our long-suffering tenants out of their leases when their landlords refuse to protect their health and safety. I'm very grateful to my colleagues for indicating their initial support. We have a long way to go, and I'm counting on all of you to help us meet our commitment. Thank you.
I'm Will Jawando, County Council Member at Large. Tonight we're going to have an important discussion, the first of many about racial equity. I grew up just down the road here in the Long Branch area of Silver Spring, and so I learned what disparities and racial disparities were before I even knew what that word disparity meant. When I saw my clothes in my apartment, which was across the street from the Flower Branch apartments that blew up, I knew that things weren't equal, but I didn't know why. It's important to remember that racism and inequality are actually more American than apple pie. It's important to remember that racism is not just individual action, but it's a system of racial hierarchy that infects every facet of our lives. The compounded effects of chattel slavery, of Jim Crow, of educational resource gaps, of redlining, of mass incarceration, and the unequal distribution of wealth on the basis of race and gender are inextricably linked to every public policy issue we face today. Consider a new report from the Institute for Policy Studies, which found that the 400 richest Americans have more wealth than all black households and a quarter of Latino households combined. Consider that. It's chilling. So here in Montgomery County, we have the opportunity to lead, to set up a policy and a framework that allows us to examine critically the systems that got us here and how we're going to correct them and change them so that we can have a government that provides an opportunity for all of our residents. So again, I thank you and I look forward to working with my colleagues.
Good morning. I am Evan Glass. I'm an at-large member on the council. And when we talk about disparities, whether it is gender, race, or economic. It boils down to access to equity. And here we have a large disparity with that access, whether it is jobs, whether it is transit, whether it is education. I want to focus this year particularly looking at our access to transit. And I'm glad we're inside today because I took the bus to get down here. I like taking public transportation, and we have some inequity within our transportation here in Montgomery County. When you realize that the largest indicator of one's economic status is their access to transportation. And if you miss your bus or the bus is late, that's dollars in your pocket. And our low-income communities here in Montgomery County have twice the level of reliability and dependence on our public transportation system. So if we really want to help everybody increase their access to opportunity, we have to increase our public transportation system here. And I look forward to adding that component to this conversation over the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Navarro, County Executive Elrich, for bringing us together today. I grew up in Oakland, California, and that is a city that is truly divided between black and white, and families and kids that have opportunity and those that don't. And I experienced that in the world around me as a child, and you can't live in an environment like that and not feel it personally and not feel compelled to take action. And I've devoted my work in public service, my career, to trying to bring opportunity to all people in a community. It's what led me to support funding to reduce class size in MCPS, to close the achievement gap, to add funding to Head Start so that Head Start could be a full-day program, to support public transportation, because public transportation is the avenue to social justice, to support housing reforms, to put more affordable housing in wealthy communities where for generations African Americans were unable to live due to whites-only covenants or whites-only loans to housing developers. So this conversation is about overcoming hundreds of years of deliberate policy by the federal, state, and local government to create inequity, and we're here today because we're going to work on this problem ever more in the future. Thank you.
Let me just say that being a person who was born and raised here in Montgomery County, I've seen our journey, and it's one in which is familiar to me based on the stories that my mother and father used to tell me growing up in the South, both in South Carolina and Virginia. And one of the things that I think we always need to pay attention to is what was denied to communities of color for so long, and that's access. Access to education, access to jobs, access to transportation. It was all of those things that we put roadblocks in. In fact, we had laws that said that you could not have the same education for a reason, because they did not want folks to actually attain the same level of success, to be competitive. And so now we're in a space where we're starting to say we need to tear down those barriers. But folks, those barriers still exist in many parts of our country, and unfortunately still exist in many parts of our county. And so that's why this work is so important. We need to make sure that we're intentional about stamping out those bits of racism, those bits of discrimination that continue to exist in our communities. And we have to be real and accepting of the fact that they exist. We have to be real and accepting of the fact that there are people who look at me when I walk into a store and think, regardless of what I'm wearing, regardless of the success that I've had, that I'm lesser than them. That is still a reality today in 2019. That is why this equity policy is so important. Because if we're truly going to live up to that moniker, that all of us are truly created equal, we have to make sure that everyone believes that. Because if they don't, then we're doing all this work for naught. Thank you very much.
We're all very passionate, and I think that says a lot in terms of the goals that we're here to achieve. So now I want to turn it over to Dr. Pollard, who leads our Montgomery College. This is a very important institution, a well-recognized institution that provides those kinds of opportunities, that kind of access to many of our residents. Dr. Pollard.
Thank you, Council President Navarro and County Executive, for this phenomenal leadership in here. I have to say, I was sitting here and I had the pleasure of sitting down and listening to our elected officials, and I'm very moved for a lot of different reasons. I'm moved because I live in a county that has a little bit of courage to take on this work. And as the mother of a little brown boy, I remain, I remain proud that I live in Montgomery County. So I'm also proud to be the leader of your community college, because we know that any conversation about racial equity, about social justice, about equity and inclusion is dependent upon education. We know for a fact that at Montgomery College, we cannot empower our students to change their lives without addressing issues of racial inequality and social injustice. So as an organization, we are committed to doing this work. And I always think about the words of Congressman John Lewis when he says we have to have a little bit of good trouble and raw courage to do this work. So at Montgomery College, we've adopted a platform of radical inclusion as a way for us to think about how we frame this work. And we've done this first by looking at policies around equity and inclusion that have been set by our Board of Trustees that we call intrusive, being very deliberate about how we talk about and think about our culture for our students, how we think about student success, civil discourse, and freedom of speech. Our board drives a culture of equity that has real teeth and is aligned with the outcomes and experiences of our students and of our employees. Second, we support racial equality by data. It makes no sense to us to look at mass numbers without disaggregation of those numbers, and we have to understand what that disaggregation means. Then we can create targeted programs and solutions like our ACES program that we've been able to create with our partners at MCPS and USG. We can create our Achieving the Promise Academy, where we're working to ensure that outcomes for all students across race, gender, and socioeconomic status is equitable. We also look at this as it relates to our faculty and staff. We offer professional development that increases cultural competence in our classrooms and in the spaces in which our students attend. These trainings create unique opportunities for our employees to lean into the work, so much so that I really want to also lift up the work that the council has done and the council president by bringing in the Racial Equity Institute to work with the leadership of the council and of the county government. We're going to bring them in this summer to work with every member of our administrative team at Montgomery College. I want to thank Marie Taylor and Leadership Montgomery for their work in helping us to make arrangements for that. Since our mission also calls for us to enrich the life of the community, we're taking this to heart through our work, through our engagement centers, and through our work in creating dialogue and spaces for conversations. We welcome the opportunity to help sponsor and co-host some of the toolkit conversations that are said here, because that's the work of what your community college does. We also believe that language and communication is critical. So we've translated our website into the top 6 languages that are used within Montgomery County. And we're diligent in making sure that those languages are accessible and the resources that we provide to our employees and to our students and to the community. And we have bilingual employees at our community engagement centers, and we're marketing to the glorious diversity of this community. Making our student voices and experiences are critical and prominent in what we do. With 72% of our students being non-white at Montgomery College, thousands of international students, both DACA students and Dreamers, we know for a fact that we have to give agency to those voices and to lift them up in spaces where people don't always know how to hear them. So our student life programming has been critical in this space, and we're going to continue to do that. How we use our space is also critical. Looking at our bathrooms, nursing facilities for our students, wellness and meditation. And I really want to thank Casey Anderson for the work that they've done with Park and Planning to help us be deliberate about how we look at space and how we work with communities to create space that's relevant for the work that we do. And finally, through partnerships and coalitions. I am beyond the fact of the idea that everyone should be a partner with everyone. That usually means in Montgomery County, you buy a table at my chicken dinner and I buy a table at your chicken dinner. We are moving beyond that and to look at outcomes and making sure that partnerships are real and substantive and that we're able at the end of the day to say we did something, not that we just came together and said that we're partners. Finally, and what I really want to end with is this idea that we choose to live in Montgomery County, and Montgomery College is the community's college. We represent Montgomery County in miniature, and dare I say, in macro as well. We know for a fact that we are not only the future of Montgomery County, we are the present. And we stand ready to be with our council and the work that they're doing with our county executive and with each of you in helping to make Montgomery County the place where we choose to be at each and every day to fulfill that promise for Maria, for Muhammad, and certainly for Miles. Thank you.
Board of Education President Shebra Evans.
As stated, I am Shebra Evans, the board president, and I represent District 4, but really I feel like an at-large member. All the students, I care about all of them. So just a pleasure to be here, and I'm gonna echo some of the comments that you've heard earlier. I feel really honored to live here in Montgomery County at this moment in time. We are committed to cultivating a community not based on tolerance, but trying to leverage our diversity and enhancing our community. We really do a great job of that. And so just a pleasure to be here today. And there's intentionality about how we're thinking about doing this work. And we're all, as you've heard from Dr. Pollard, we're all in our individual capacities really working and focused on equity. But I'm honored to be working here and being able to turn to our partners to decide how do we do this together to make certain that individuals and community members are not being impacted by the decisions that we're making, and that we're looking at everything through an equity lens. So I just really want to take this opportunity to thank our President Navarro for this initiative. It's really important, in particular for communities of color. And so just looking forward to talking with our community tonight. The one thing that I like about Montgomery County, the school board does this all the time, is we engage in courageous conversations. We are not afraid to do that. And this is going to require for us to really be open and honest. So I'm happy to know that we have a toolkit that is available to our community members, because we will be looking forward to getting that information to see how it will help us to further continue to do this work. So I just want to state that one of our core values in Montgomery County Public Schools is equity. We want to make certain that regardless of who our children are, no matter where they come from, that they are thriving and that they're getting a quality education. And so I just want to just list a couple of things that we're doing to focus on those efforts. We are making certain that every employee is trained with cultural proficiency and implicit bias training. We are making certain that our equity unit is working with our schools to make certain that the students that are in those buildings feel valued and that they know that they can work and reach their potential because of the people who are there that believe in them. We are intentional about hiring a diverse teaching staff that reflects the diversity of our school system. We have an equity policy that we've enhanced. It's policy ACA, non-discrimination, equity, and cultural proficiency, where regardless of who you are, that people will not be able to determine your outcomes. We just recently acquired a new curriculum for our kindergarten through 8th grade, and that is a curriculum that will be able to look at the people who are that we're educating through a cultural lens. We have a student-led organization, the Minority Scholars Program. I have to definitely mention them. They are taking ownership of their education to make certain that there are opportunities for our students, that we're closing the achievement gap, and that we're creating access. We have equal opportunity schools, where we're trying to make certain that students are getting that high rigorous programs in advanced placement classes in high school, and that is being monitored on a daily basis. And I am working with our state. I am co-chairing the equity committee to make certain that now it's mandatory that all of our school districts have equity policies, and that comes from the work that MCPS has done. We looked at the work that we've done here in this county to be able to determine what needs to be done throughout the county, throughout the state, I should say, I'm sorry. So just really wanted to assure our community, our county, that our school system, we care, we're looking at everything through an equity lens, and we want to make certain that all of our students are able to thrive and achieve regardless of their background. So I thank you again, Council President, and I thank you all for being here for this very important conversation.
So I would like to invite our chair, Casey Anderson, to give us some very brief remarks as to how park and planning is going to address this issue.
Thank you, and I want to thank the council president, really, from the bottom of my heart. The equity training that we did was very moving, and it meant a lot to me. I think everybody who attended really approached it in the spirit of all of us putting our hearts and our heads both into this project of equity. And I wanted to pick up on something that Dr. Pollard had said about data. Planners have put an unbelievable amount of resourcefulness, energy, and resources into figuring out how many cars can fit through an intersection in a given period of time. If we could apply the same degree of resourcefulness and energy and resources to analyzing equity, how powerful would that be? The planning department and the parks department have taken steps over the past couple of years, really, to try to apply some of those tools, and those are some of our core skill sets. We are really good at taking apart data. We have very sophisticated ability to deeply analyze what's going on in the 504 square miles that make up Montgomery County. And some of the recent plans that we've produced, including the Urban Parks Plan, Energized Public Spaces, have included an explicit equity analysis. The recent Bicycle Master Plan and some of the pedestrian safety initiatives we've had with Veers Mill, coming up, the Aspen Hill Pedestrian Safety Vision Zero study, have been performed with equity in mind. I think we have a lot of work to do, and I'm committed to doing that with the planning board and with our elected officials from the county council and the county executive to make that more systematic and comprehensive, so everything that we do will be viewed through the lens of racial equity, just like we always perform a traffic analysis. So I think that I'm inspired by the fact that we have such a broad consensus, and as a number of people have already said, that we live in a community that's ready to embrace that as a core part of what we do. Thanks very much.
In my opinion, it's all about the voice of the youth. What we're trying to do here is to set the stage so that they can go off and fight other battles, but hopefully this will not be one that will persist. And so I'm very excited to hear from Ananya Tariconda, student member of the Board of Education, and I'll ask Jonathan Jays Green also to come up because you're going to hear from both of them.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to thank Council President Navarro for having me here today to speak on behalf of youth in Montgomery County, specifically youth in Montgomery County Public Schools. Today I come with a call to action and ask to all of you to include youth in this conversation. The work that Council President Navarro and the County Council and the County Executive are embarking on today is crucial to the development of the next generation, because it is exhausting to go to school in a place where you walk into an honors class and people don't think you belong there. It is exhausting to go to school in a place where none of your teachers look like you. And it is exhausting to go to school in a place where the curriculum that you're learning from is written by your former oppressors. So I think it's incredibly crucial that we look at these issues, and like Ms. Evans said, we're doing a lot of work on the board, especially in the adoption of our curriculum and in the hiring of a diverse workforce, because our students aren't going to stay quiet anymore. Our Minority Scholars Program put together a 500-student retreat to have candid conversations about what it means to go to school in Montgomery County as a student of color. We are not afraid to speak up. We are not afraid to speak the harsh realities 400 years later, too. So I'd like to invite you all on April 8th to Gaithersburg High School to hear the candid conversations that youth in our schools are having. I'm really fortunate that Council President Navarro has expressed her willingness and her interest in hearing the youth perspective directly as well. So looking forward to seeing you all there, and thank you for having me today.
I want to start by thanking Council President Navarro and Council County Executive Elrich and the entire team for their vision to make Montgomery County a better place for all of us. As someone who grew up in the county, and I'm a proud product of our school system and our community college, I'm always really honored to be able to speak on behalf of my community and to be in the place that saw me growing up. I'll keep my remarks brief today. I want to bring and share with you a framework that has really shaped my life and my work. And it is a framework created or coined by a UCLA professor, Kimberly Crenshaw, and it's called intersectionality. And intersectionality is really about, it's a framework that helps us interrogate the ways in which multiple systems of oppression combine to produce particular outcomes for people living at those intersections. So using intersectionality as a framework help us to really focus and analyze our data and outcomes, and to ask what is happening to marginalized communities here in the county? What is happening to those at those intersections, right? What is happening to domestic violence victims who are also undocumented? What is happening to queer and trans Black youth? What is happening to poor Latino families across the county? What is happening to Black pregnant women in the county? What is happening to Black undocumented immigrants? Intersectionality is less about acknowledging that people with different experiences exist. We know that, right? But really it's about looking at the ways in which structural issues like racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, misogyny come together and notice what happens once they combine with each other. And using the learnings of their experiences to fight and end these systems of oppression once and for all. And at this point, if you're looking at me and saying, that sounds like a lot of work, it is. But as people who believe in justice and freedom, there is no higher calling we could be committing ourselves to. To know that we are living through really difficult times, and we are committing to being rigorous in our approach to end these systems of oppression, ending racism right here in Montgomery County, is a call of love. And as a young person who wants to grow old in this county, who wants to raise my kids, I really urge you to think about how that really impacts my families and how that impacts the future. Thank you so much.
Once upon a time when I decided to run for office, I was told time and time again that it wasn't my turn, that it wasn't my time, that I didn't know enough about land use, I didn't know enough about environmental issues, and therefore I should just stay in the education lane. And I remember saying to many people, you know, I'm an immigrant. My husband is a Black man. My daughters are children of color. And I remember saying to some people, listen, I know maybe I'm a little strange because I am just literally stepping up and taking my seat. I'm not waiting to be invited. But you should practice with me, because the generation that's coming behind me, they're not going to ask for permission. And this is what you just heard. This is our present and our future. So if anybody feels uncomfortable or thinks that we can't do this, let me tell you right now, just as I said before, practice with me, because this is here, this is now, and this is where we need to go. And I will also add that when you look around you and you see on a daily basis the news, when you hear what's happening in our county, in our state, in our country, when you hear what's happening, and for me it's personal, what's happening in Venezuela right now, make no mistake, if we don't get this right, we may be facing similar issues very soon. So I want to say that this is a very personal and wonderful issue and moment for me, and I thank each and every one of you for being here. Please come back tonight at 7:30, spread the word. And again, we have toolkits. We have it in English and Spanish. I want to thank Berta Cersosimo for doing all the translation, and MCPS for publishing this. I want to thank everybody for being here.